So, two things that confidence comes from. I think it's important first to understand the two sources of confidence. Number one is your preparation. Okay, your preparation is the first of the two things that confidence comes from. If you're not putting in the time, you're not putting in the work, I don't think you deserve to be confident. You shouldn't be confident yet in something that you haven't become good at yet. So put in the time, put in the work, get better at your skills, right? In confidence, we call that the confidence competence circle, right? The more competent you get at something, the more confident you're going to be, right? The more confident, right, you become more competent, and so on. It's a confidence competence circle. If you're not putting in the time to become competent at something, I don't think you deserve to be confident yet. Okay. Now, many of you probably do put in the time. Not only in practice, you put in extra time on your training, on your skills, but where you're plagued is from the second source of confidence. And the second thing I'd put in my notes for confidence is, and the second source is what you think about. Those are the two sources of confidence. And many of you struggle more on that side, right? You do put in the work, you do put in the time, but where your mind goes is where you struggle. So how do you control your mind, right? Because if you don't control your mind's gonna control you. I'm gonna give you just a couple of tactics in order to keep your confidence on what I call the positive slope, right? You have a negative slope on the confidence mountain. You've all had bad games and you think about it and then you think something's wrong and then you have another bad game and it snowballs out of control. You've all experienced that on the confidence mountain. But you can also have a snowball and avalanche on the positive side with certain mental tools. The first is the list of positive 10. And what this tool is after every game and every practice or training session, you sit down and either type up or write out 10 positive things you did well in that game or training session. And I would put a star in my notes next to 10 positive things and put the reminder specific. So you're not just gonna say, oh, I passed the ball well or I played great defense. Specific moment when you had a great stop on defense or a specific pass that was accurate or a specific score or whatever it may be for your sport. So what happens is you're beginning to shift your mind's attention, your focus, to those positive specific plays. Okay? Energy flows where your attention goes. So if your attention is on all the negative plays you made, that's where your energy is going to flow. The more and more you hold yourself to discipline in making this list, the more and more your mind's focused on that, and the more positive things happen. It's this kind of same type of loop action. It's not going to be right away, but if you consistently make this list of positive 10, that's where your focus is going to be more of. Athletes, we're generally our number one critic. So you also have to be your number one fan, and part of that is remembering the great moments. Okay? I've been around some Olympians, I've been around the top professionals in multiple sports, and it's amazing how they have selective amnesia. They allow themselves, amnesia is when you can't remember, they allow themselves the luxury of forgetting past negative experiences. And maybe if you're like me, when I was in a high school athlete, man, I'd have a bad game and I'd sit in bed and I'd think over and over and replay those bad plays over and over and over. And then you're not controlling your confidence, you're not controlling your mind. So next tool, I would say rewatch your best games. LeBron James actually did this in 2013 when he faced Greg Popovich in the finals, because if you're a basketball junkie, you remember in 2007, Popovich, they gave LeBron all sorts of space, let him shoot, and he missed, and they beat him 4-0, swept him in the NBA Finals. LeBron faced him in 2013. Popovich did the same thing for the first 3 games, and LeBron shot half of his season average. He was shooting terribly. After game 3, he got his assistant coach to clip together, or the film guy to clip together every made shot from his entire 2013 regular season. And that 18+ minute video, he just watched and watched and watched and watched. He went on to shoot in game 4 through 7 better than his season average because he reminded himself what he was good at. Now, I wouldn't suggest that you do this in front of people. Also, don't ask people to come and watch your highlight film. You're gonna seem weird and arrogant. People aren't gonna like you. But watch it by yourself. Watch your best game, watch your best half, watch highlights. Just constantly remind yourself of what you're able to do. It's hard to be an athlete. It's hard. You're getting critiques from all sorts of places all the time. You constantly have to foster your confidence. Confidence is a skill that, just like your tangible skills like defense and passing and shooting, whatever your sport has, Confidence is a skill that you need to spend time on. When I asked high school, college, and pro athletes around the world over the last 5 years, I've asked probably over 10,000 athletes this question. Almost always I get answers of the game is 40% or more mental. So here's my challenging question for you as a team and as individuals working on your confidence. If you think the game is 60% mental, let's say, why don't you spend 60% of your time on your mental habits? And I'm not saying if you think the game is 74% mental, you need to spend exactly 74% of your time on the mental aspects. But my challenge to you would be, if you think the game is half or mostly mental, and you're spending 5% of your time, if we looked at all your time in practice, in the weight room, in games, right? That's all physical training. You're working on the physical parts of the game. How often are you working on confidence? How often are you working on visualization? How often are you rewatching your best games? How often are you watching film and developing your mental IQ for your sport? So just a challenge to think about. It doesn't have to be perfectly aligned, but most athletes I meet are spending 10% or less of their time on the mental sides of the game. So a great one that you can work on with is visualization. And I want to tell you about one of the greatest football players, American football players of all time. So Jim Brown was in 2020 recognized as the greatest football player in NFL history. They made a list, okay? He was a multi-time NFL MVP and champion. And I actually had the opportunity, I was teaching visualization at a weekend course a few years ago, and one of the observing coaches pulled me aside after and he said, hey, I want to tell you a story. He was an older gentleman in his 80s. He said, I actually had the opportunity to coach one of the greatest football players ever, Jim Brown. He's a running back. And he said, I've never seen an athlete in all of my coaching experience spend as much time visualizing positive plays and visualizing success as Jim Brown did. He said he spent hours and hours visualizing. He said he was so committed to visualization that there was one game in particular I remember, he had a breakout game, he ran for 300 yards or something like that, and he said, I was in the locker room after while the reporters were interviewing him, and they were asking him about some of his runs, and he just started to describe a particular run in such detail, where the defenders were, what moves he made, how he broke out to the outside and the inside. And he said he described it in such detail. And I remember as a coach, I didn't remember, because this coach was one of the coaches on the offensive coaching staff for the Cleveland Browns. And he said, I didn't remember the play. Because he described the play so vividly that it was specific. And so he said, I went up and I immediately watched the film of all our offensive plays because they had already been cut. And he said, Jim Brown was describing a play that did not happen that game. And he had done so much visualization that he couldn't remember the difference between reality and what he had visualized. And that's one of the most successful athletes of all time. So how can you visualize? I think there's lots of different ways. I think one of the most basic forms is just sitting down, and if you've ever done meditation, it could be kind of similar, but if you've never done meditation, just sit down and daydream about an opponent and you making plays against that opponent or against a rival team and you just making all sorts of successful plays. It's almost daydreaming at its most basic form. Now, there are exercises you can do where you put yourself in your home gym or on your field and specifically make shots or make passes, and that can be really beneficial visualization as well. Okay, individual reps, 10 reps at a time, seeing something happen in slow speed and then see it happen uncomfortably quick in game speed. But if you're not sure where to go, just start with daydreaming about making plays. I want to dive into a really advanced form of visualization for those of you who are going to start to dive into this and talk about subconscious training. Okay, so you're going to begin to train your subconscious to visualize and manifest success in your sport. Now, sports psychologists would recommend that this happens right before bed when you're transitioning from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind. Or during meditation, you get to it's called an alpha brain wave, where your conscious mind kind of sits back and your subconscious mind takes over. So whether you could do a simple 5-minute meditation and then do these subconscious questions, right? So you can title your notes, subconscious questions. I ask myself, or would ask myself as an athlete, this during, after 5 minutes of meditation in the morning or right as you're falling asleep. I'm going to give you some examples, and then I want you to create an example for yourself. So first type of, let me just give you a few thoughts about all the subconscious questions. You want to start with a why is it or how is it? And that's important to tricking your subconscious into believing that it already exists. Also, you want to include no matter what or all the time. So an example of that would be, let's say, and I'll give you a defense example here in a bit, but if I'm thinking about my defense, how is it that I am a lockdown defender all the time, no matter who I'm playing against? So instead of saying, and affirmations can be powerful, but science has shown that they aren't completely effective at changing your belief and thought about yourself. So how is it assumes in your subconscious that it's already true, right? And then no matter what assumes that it happens every single time. Is it going to happen every single time? Probably not, and it won't happen tomorrow, right? This is for the course of several weeks you should be doing this, but you're tricking your subconscious to change your belief about your confidence in your ability. So an example for your training might be, how is it that I'm able to push my body to higher levels of training all the time, no matter my motivation level? So you're asking yourself this question, almost like it already exists, like you're excited about, like, how is it that I'm able to push my body and my training, right? Like it already it exists, right? So this is a high level of visualization, but I think you can begin to implement it to change your confidence. How is it that I'm able to push my body to higher levels of training all the time, no matter my motivation level? Next subconscious question is around time management, because to be a successful athlete, you gotta have time for your school, right? And for your training. So you gotta be able to manage time. Why is it that I'm able to do so much with so few hours, no matter what? Rather than getting overwhelmed, right? I'm constantly training my subconscious to believe that I manage time effectively. How is it that, or why is it that I'm able to do so much with so few hours, no matter what? Now let's dive into performance, so your performance in your sport. Why is it that I'm able to make plays and decisions so fluidly, effortlessly, and efficiently, no matter what, in every game? So I generally will choose 2 or 3 questions per night, and I'll just repeat those 2 or 3 questions, okay? And that's what I would recommend to you as athletes.